And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Put On Waivers Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. I don't do this alone. I do it with my partner, Ryan Holmes. Ryan, how you doing today?
Doing good. Another beautiful day in Southern California.
It is. No question about it. Our TPOW podcast is my Twitter handle, and then RHLM22 is Ryan's. You can catch us on Instagram, Twitter, iHeartRadio, wherever you can get podcasts, and YouTube. You can definitely find us there. 858-299-5592 is our text line, so definitely do that. We have some questions off that text line as well. Right now, we have our guest, Julian Council. He is from the Locked On Panthers podcast. So not the Panthers in Florida, the Panthers in Carolina. The Carolina Panthers here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm sure he has. I'm sure he used a little bet online today, and I'm sure he used had some Built bars today as well to get going for this interview. Julian, how you doing today?
Doing all right, guys. How are y'all doing?
We're doing good. So I'm going to start off real quick and talk about Joe Brady, because he is a kind of a young, up and coming offensive play caller. Has a lot of those spread concepts, uses that shallow cross to kind of get things going offensively. He really, last year they were able to do some of those horizontal passes to get people open, because they had Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Now with Sam Darnold, maybe they can hit some of those vertical shots. They do have one of the fastest skill position groups in the league. I think only KC has guys who run faster than what you have in Carolina. What are your thoughts about Sam Darnold and on the relationship there with Joe Brady, kind of keeping that offense going in the right direction as far as being explosive?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons they brought Sam Darnold here to Carolina was because Teddy Bridgewater couldn't really stretch the field last year. You saw a lot of check downs, a lot of underneath throws, and that's not like Sam Darnold's not going to be asked to do that. But the hope is, with his arm strength and his talent, at least the talent we have not seen yet, that he'll be able to elevate this offense in a way that Teddy Bridgewater could not do. I like Joe Brady. I really do. I would just say that in some situations, particularly in the red zone, and we can even go back to week 1 against the Raiders that used to be there in the Bay Area, where he decides to hand ball over to a fullback on 4th and inches instead of Christian McCaffrey, who arguably is the best running back in the league, was a tad bit puzzling. Yes. And the communication issues they had last year with Teddy Bridgewater were things that were pretty big hiccups, and we already saw it in the first preseason game that we've already had that kind of same quarterback, coordinator, head coach miscommunication. So I like Joe Brady by just kind of pumping the brakes here, because I know a lot of people are thinking about he should be one of the top head coaching candidates going into next season cycle, depending on how things work out. Just remember that until last season, the guy had never been a coordinator and been a main play caller on the NFL level, pro level, college level, high school level, Pop Warner. It doesn't matter. Flag football on Saturday mornings at the YMCA. Dude had never really called plays, but I like what he presents, and I like the opportunity that Sam Darnold has here in Carolina with the receiving core that you brought up there, and with a young, smart offensive mind like Joe Brady.
So you talked about on your podcast about Matt Rule having the best 5 offensive linemen. Yeah. At the end of the day, when the season starts, do you feel like Brady Christensen will be part of that best 5? Because it seems like people in Pantherland really like him a lot.
When the season starts, no, I don't see that happening. Like, let's understand the guy last year was an All-American, was fantastic at BYU. Mm-hmm. But BYU didn't play anybody. That's the same thing I said a lot about Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was going into last season in a quarterback battle, and then all of a sudden it turns out to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. I feel like he somewhere in between a guy fighting for his job and being the top overall second player in the draft. But either way, I like Brady Christensen. They had him rated as a 2nd-round guard and a 3rd-round tackle, so that I don't have him probably starting at tackle. Taylor Moton's obviously going to be right tackle. Left tackle, it seems like it's Cam Irving's job to lose, and currently Matt Rule sees him as their starting left tackle. Then Pat Elflein, Dennis Daly are going to be battling for the left guard position, just based off of the need in free agency and the fact that Pat Elflein was one of the first signings they had. I'd imagine that he's going to be the starting left guard. Then Matt Paradis at center, John Miller right guard. So no, I don't think starting off Brady Christensen will be among those top 5 offensive linemen. In the future, Miller's gone after this year. He's only on a 1-year deal. Brady Christensen can easily slot in there as a long-term right guard option. And then maybe Taylor Moton has to move over to left tackle because Cam Irving doesn't pan out. Maybe Brady Christensen ends up being the long-term option at right tackle when the Panthers finally fix their left tackle problem.
How much is this team going to miss Mike Davis? I understand how great Christian McCaffrey was, but it was nice to have him come in and play well for them. I know fantasy owners were he was the first thing they jumped on once McCaffrey got hurt. What are your thoughts about him? He's in Atlanta. He stays in the division, goes to Atlanta. We talk about his missing. Have they been able to replace him?
Yeah, I mean, first off, really love Mike in the way he played last year. Excited that he gets the opportunity to be the number 1 back there in Atlanta this season. I think they're actually going to miss him a lot. I think this is probably the biggest offseason loss. I know most people would say Curtis Samuel. If you look at last season, Curtis Samuel had Christian McCaffrey played a full season. It's not putting up the numbers that he put up last year as a guy who had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Mike Davis, though, came in, did yeoman's work, running super hard throughout the entire season. And there's kind of questions, too, with the running back spot here in camp. Chuba Hubbard, they drafted him in the 4th round at Oklahoma State a couple years ago. He led all of FBS Division I football with over 2,000 yards rushing. So he has the talent, but he's also had some issues of injuries. Right now, with Rodney Smith and Reggie Bonifant, 2 other guys who are battling for that number 2, number 3 running back spot, they've been out for the majority of camp. So there's not really a clear-cut number 2 running back that you can trust and rely on behind Christian McCaffrey. So I do think that they're actually going to miss Mike Davis a decent amount this year until they figure out whether Chuba Hubbard, Reggie Bonifant, or Rodney Smith is that number 2 guy behind CMC.
The last thing I have was for me would be probably Will Grier. Is he going to develop into a solid backup quarterback for this team, or maybe a guy who they can develop and maybe trade in the future? What are your thoughts about his development?
We're taping this on August 18th. Come August 31st, the final cut down, Will Grier will not be a Carolina Panther. He was not drafted by this regime. He is a Charlotte area guy, so certainly people like myself and all folks around in the Charlotte area are rooting for him to stick around. He just hasn't shown much, if anything, at all to prove that he can be a solid backup. PJ Walker tore it up in the XFL of Houston for those 5 games, played for Matt Rule back at Temple, and clearly was the number 2 quarterback last year. And then looking how he played on Sunday against the Colts in the first preseason game, I don't see how there's any scenario that Will Grier stays on the 53-man roster. Now, there's a way that maybe he gets waived and they pick him up on waivers, but considering that he's a 3rd-round pick, I'm sure there might be a team out there that might be trying to give him an opportunity. So I don't really see Will Grier having much of a future here in Carolina in the next 2 weeks and beyond.
Ooh. Ryan, it's all you.
Yeah, Julian, I know we talked a lot about the offense here, but I think this is my sleeper team in the NFC South. I think they're going to push for a playoff spot. I want to talk about the defense because this defense is going to carry this team. We can talk about all the skill position players we want, but I believe in this pass rush. I think they got 4 or 5 guys that can get after it. I really like Chin and Horn on the back end. But what have you seen so far with the pass rush? Who are their starting ends going to be? And what kind of do you have an idea what the rotations are going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, they're deep, that's for sure. Brian Burns is a dude who I think has a chance to be a Pro Bowler this year. He's yet to have double-digit sacks, but 16.5 in the first 2 years here in Carolina. The only player in Panthers history has more is Julius Peppers, who's 3rd on the all-time list and going to Canton. Now, I'm not saying that Brian Burns is ever going to be Pep, because Pep is an athletic freak, and we're probably never going to see another guy like that here in this region. But Brian Burns has a chance to be one of the top edge rushers in the league. So he's definitely going to start. Hassan Reddick was fantastic last year with the Arizona Cardinals, played for Matt Rule and Farrell Snow, the coordinator back at Temple. But this time last year was heading into his final year at Arizona because they didn't want to pick up his 5th-year option. So I'm kind of wondering, was last year the contract year winning? Was it a lie? Or is he actually that kind of dude who was playing out of position his first 3 seasons in Arizona before he popped off? So those 2 guys going off the edge. Morgan Fox had 6.5 sacks last year, playing next to Aaron Donald, in Los Angeles. Now, I think that had a lot to help him out there, but he's one of those guys who can come off the edge. And you also got Derek Brown inside. So you can see those 3 guys lined up in a 4-man front. That Phil Snow's going to be super multiple. Marquis Haynes, underrated dude, had 4 sacks last year, looked awesome starting in that preseason game against Indy on Sunday. Yetur Gross-Matos didn't really get a ton of snaps last year. It was a second rounder out of Penn State, but he's another guy who can come out there and do something for you. You had, Christian Miller, who opted out last year when he was healthy, his rookie year at 2.5 sacks as a fourth rounder out of Alabama. They are loaded when it comes to edge rushers. And this is a team that could not get after the passer at all last year. And to have those guys and that kind of depth and that kind of rotation, it makes me really excited about the kind of havoc they could wreak on the likes of Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, and Matt Ryan, and whoever else they face this year in the 2021 NFL season.
Yeah, and even Davion Nixon, the fifth rounder out of Iowa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can get after the passer too. The secondary to me is really young. I do have concerns at the strong safety position. And last year, Phil Snow liked to do a lot of 3 safety looks. And I'm having trouble finding a second safety on this roster, let alone a third. So I think the depth in the secondary might be an issue. But they should be able to hold up at corner with Horn. And they got some veterans in Boye and Melvin, and then the rookie Taylor as well. But I think the pass rush is going to be good enough to get after him, where the back end will hold up just well enough. And in that division, I think that this team does have a chance to compete for 8 or 9 wins and push for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I like the cornerback spot. It's in a better position than it's been in a long time, honestly, since Josh Norman left. Because typically the way things have gone here in Carolina, when you look at Dante Jackson, who finally is just be the number 2 corner with J.C. Horn coming in. When Dante was a rookie, they had no choice but to play him day one because of injuries and just the lack of talent at that position. Last year, Troy Pride Jr., who just suffered an ACL injury, same case, had to step in day one as a fourth rounder out of Notre Dame, wasn't ready to go. Even James Bradbury, who got paid a lot and played really well last year, going up to play for Dave Gettleman, who drafted him in Carolina, he had to start at the beginning of his rookie year. And he did pretty well, turned out to be a fairly solid corner, a very good corner in this league. But they have had situations where guys had to come in as rookies and have to play immediately without any veteran help around them. That's not the case with J.C. Horn. He can step in. He's going to start day one. But he's got A.J. Boye, who's been a Pro Bowler. Dante Jackson has run into plenty of interceptions throughout the first 3 years of his career. Now, injuries last year really hampered him. He's been uncoachable at times and had some issues there. But he has the talent to be the number 2 corner. And the fact that he's going to have some pressure taken off of him, I'm happy about that. But yeah, at the safety position, you're right. Jeremy Chin played the majority of snaps last year at linebacker, which is not his natural position, and one of the top rookie defensive players. Could have been defensive rookie of the year. Chase Young wasn't Chase Young. So I'm not worried about him at safety. Now, Justin Burris is going to be the starter opposite of him there at strong safety. Didn't really do too much last year to make you feel super confident about him. I know the coaching staff likes some of the younger guys, like Kenny Robinson, the 5th rounder from last year's draft, who started out at West Virginia and played in the XFL. He had an interception on Sunday against the Colts. They also like Sean Chandler, who was a UDFA, and Sam Franklin had to step in last year when Justin Burris got hurt. So they got some young guys at safety that they're going to want to develop. I just think that they would at least do well to check out the waiver wire once the cut down goes and to see what kind of veteran safety they might be able to get there that can at least give some sort of experience if Burris or Chen were to go down for a few games.
Yeah, and definitely, and bouncing back to the offense real quick, we know they're going to control the outside with Marshall and Moore and Anderson. Who's going to win this tight end battle? Is there a clear-cut starter here that can help over the middle of the field that can allow those guys on the outside to work a little bit easier?
Yeah, it looks like they're going to carry 4 tight ends. So there's probably 2 guys who are actually the starters on this roster. Dan Arnold, who comes over from Arizona, who was a converted wide receiver, now playing tight end, and then Ian Thomas entering his 4th year here in Carolina, drafted from the previous regime, did not have a good season last year. He's had plenty of opportunities with Greg Olsen injuries, and then last season, first year under Matt Rule, to show that he truly is a tight end. He's a former basketball player, only played 2 years of football at Indiana before coming here to Carolina. So those would be the top 2 guys. But honestly, from what I've heard and seen, I mean, Dan Arnold's the number 1 tight end on this roster. And him and Sam Darnold, which is weird to say, Dan Arnold, Sam Darnold, those 2 guys apparently have a pretty good connection rapport so far throughout training camp. So if there was a competition, which I don't really think there is, it would be very clear that Dan Arnold is the top tight end on his Panthers roster, with Ian Thomas being number 2. And you got Tommy Tremblay, who's drafted out of Notre Dame, who showed a little bit more than just being a run blocker with 3 catches and a touchdown on Sunday against the Colts.
Dwayne?
All right, cool. So just wrapping up here with Julian Council of Locked On Panthers podcast, talking about the Carolina Panthers and their upcoming season in the NFC South. Can you give me two guys here? One guy who is ready to have a breakout season and one guy who's on the last leg who will not be on the roster next year.
Who, man. Okay, well, the thing is, a lot of those. Well, I don't think Ian Thomas, in terms of guy who's on his last legs. I don't see Ian Thomas being here in Carolina next year. One of the guys that we felt was on his last leg, Greg Little, just got traded to the Miami Dolphins the other day. Will Grier, as I said earlier, I don't think he's going to be sticking around much longer. Maybe he might be on the practice squad, but I just don't. He's not going to be on the 53-man roster this year. I don't see the scenario where that happens. So I have to say Ian Thomas. He certainly is an athlete. Like, tight end is such a hard position, even if you played it for your entire life, to come in the NFL and to contribute immediately. And for someone to go and have played basketball and then to try and be a true tight end. Like, Chris Manhurst was here for a couple of years. He played basketball in college at Canisius, but he was a blocking tight end. That's all they really asked of him. I know everyone's trying to find the next Antonio Gates. That just is not really a reality, in my opinion, from most of these teams out to the NFL looking to convert some of those guys who play basketball into a tight end. Like, Antonio Gates is going to Canton, and I don't think we're ever going to see a guy like him in the league again in terms of just converted basketball player to a Hall of Fame tight end. Guy who's poised for a breakout, I think it's Dante Jackson. I really do. Just he's fine. He's going to be healthy this year. He has pressure off of him with J.C. Horn, who's going to have plenty of pressure because of being the 8th pick, first defensive player, and of course the team opting not to take a quarterback there at number 8. But Dante Jackson be able to have A.J. Boye there, J.C. Horn or Sean Melvin behind him, and not be asked to just be that one corner that you can rely on and to play some more nickel packages. I think he has a chance to really break out this year. Now, does he sign a big-time deal here in Carolina? I'm not quite sure. It depends on just how things go, but this coaching staff seems to like him. So I think he's the guy who has a breakout year this year, can run into a few interceptions, be a more consistent cover guy, and have a solid season for Carolina that can earn him a new deal. I don't know how big of a deal it'll be, but a new deal here in Carolina next season.
Cool. Listen, thank you for joining us here on the Put On Waivers podcast, our NFL show. Listen, we'll be listening to yours, and I definitely appreciate the time. Give us some insight into that, into the world of the Carolina Panthers. Do you have a pick for the division yet, or are you kind of holding that for your show?
Well, I think the pick is what everyone's picking, right?
Yeah,
Tampa, they brought back everybody, and
damn Brady's everywhere.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, the Panthers are the youngest team in the NFL. Like, I say this all the time on my show, just to try and get people to understand like what realistic expectations should be for this team. Like, I agree with you, Ryan, that like they can push to the playoffs. Like, I think in December they're going to be right in the thick of things. The problem is they got Tampa twice, New Orleans once, which we're not really quite sure where New Orleans is going to be, and then Buffalo on the road. Like, that's best case scenario, probably 1-3 in that stretch. So you better be at least like 9-6 by the time you get to that stretch if you want to make the playoffs, because I think, or whatever, I can't do the math anymore. 9-4. Yeah, you want to at least be 9-4 there, that final stretch to get to 10-7, which I think is secure than the playoffs. I think they're probably a team that can finish anywhere between 7 wins to 9 wins if things go right with Sam Darnold in this offensive line, but probably 8's the right number. So I would think they're not going to win a division. I could see them finishing second, especially with like the injuries New Orleans already has. Michael Thomas is not going to play in that week 2 game. Will Lutz, their kicker, he's going to be out. All the losses that they had, trying to figure out whether it's going to be Taysom or Jameis. Week 2 at home in this heat, come on. Like that, I feel like they can get off to a good start where they can get that one against New Orleans. And if they, maybe win or split the one later on that season, I think they can finish second in the NFC South, setting themselves up, depending on how free agency plays out next year with Tampa and them in the rest of the division, to go after the title in 2022. I think that's what's been the plan the whole time. Look at Matt Rule, what he's done. Year 1 at Temple and Baylor, bad. Year 2, take that next step. Year 3, competing for a conference championship. So I think that's kind of the way here with the Carolina Panthers. Want them to take that step this year and to be competing for a division title in 2022.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Listen, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, Dwayne, Ryan, appreciate you guys.
Yep. Thank you.
To NFC South, go right into the Panthers. I know there's a team you like, and you like that defense. The defensive line looks like it's deep. I think you make a statement your first year, right? When you are the head coach and you draft all defensive players the first year. I don't think they took a single offensive player his first draft, and now it could pay dividends because they're young, they're fast, they're athletic, and Brian Burns should be a household name by the end of the season.
Can we trade Brian Burns for Cleve Farrell? Well, that's for another discussion. But no, this defense is deep. They have pass rushers.
Poor Cleve.
They have 5 or 6 guys that are going to get after the quarterback.
Yeah.
And they can rotate those guys in and out. And then, I like their linebackers like Shaq Thompson. I like Hassan Reddick. Denzel Perryman's going to come in and play some for them. Shin on the back end is a dude. J.C. Horn has a chance to be the best corner in this draft. So they're young. They're going to give up yards. They're going to have games where there's some miscommunication, but they're going to have games where they're going to win some games just with some turnovers and speed and flying around the field. And the one thing you saw last year, they weren't very talented overall, but they were in a lot of games. Matt Rule had this team competing.
Our game, the Raider game, the Kansas City game, they should have won the Kansas City game. They were in a lot of games, yeah. And
that's what Teddy Bridgewater and no Christian McCaffrey. So now you add, if Darnold can just be average, they have the 3 wideouts that are going to give everyone fits. And then Christian McCaffrey, you got to account for him. I do have concerns about the offensive line. I'm not a big fan of Cam Irving, Pat Elflein, Matt Paredes, and John Miller. Taylor Moton's a good right tackle, but they do have some depth. They took some young guys in the draft that could step in if those other guys struggle. But I think this division after Tampa is up for grabs, and they have a real chance to finish second.
Yeah, they do. Let's just go right to who everybody thinks is going to win the division, and that is Tampa Bay. Listen, they bring everybody back. They have depth at wide receiver. They have depth at running back. They have a lot of depth at a lot of different positions. Obviously, they can't afford. I think Brady got hit, and now all of a sudden he's not playing the rest of the preseason. so we know how that goes. I know he tried to be play, but I mean you can't risk that right now when you can go back to back. And this Joe Tryon from Washington looks like he's having a good camp and being able to hit the quarterback, as if they need another pass rusher on this team when they're pretty much loaded in that department. Quick thoughts about the Bucs, because I mean we all know what they're capable of.
Yeah, if Tom Brady stays healthy and plays 17 games, they're going to win the division. And the defense is stacked, the receivers are stacked, the offensive line's good, the backs are back. They didn't lose a single guy off this roster, and somehow they got the band back together. Levante David came back, Gronkowski came back, AB came back, Fournette came back. So they were able to get those guys under contract and work them in. They got Sue back under contract, and then some of those young guys, the secondary is going to be a year older.
Yep.
With more experience in Winfield, Carlton Davis back there. So they're going to be good. The only thing that's going to stop them is injuries, and they have depth. So they're going to need several injuries to people not named Brady to not be in contention to win this division.
Yeah, no question about that. Let's roll over to the Saints. The Saints are kind of an up in the air team. I was going to pick them to be like my kind of surprise, but I just can't with all these injuries. I got to kind of go back into the archives and look and see who I think is going to be my sleeper team here, as you are all over the Panthers. But listen, this is a spot where, like, the whole Michael Thomas thing, they have to try to satisfy him. It seems like he's a guy who they paid already, they took care of, and it's still not happy consistently. What do you do with a player like that? What do you do at quarterback? I think you just play Jameis, and then if you want to bring in Taysom Hill, go ahead. Taysom Hill as a full starter for a full game, I just feel like it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. He is a fill-in once in a while kind of guy. Thoughts about the Saints? I think you live and die with Jameis, and then see what you can do next year to maybe upgrade the position. Maybe that's where Aaron Rodgers goes.
No, I agree. When you look at this team, they just don't have the offensive weapons they've had in the past, and a couple of months ago on this podcast, we talked about the Saints with Jameis being a potential playoff team. But when I look at them now, and who knows how much time Michael Thomas is going to miss. And then you look down, they lost Sanders, they lost Cook, the other 2 weapons on this offense. They're basically running out Alvin Kamara and a couple backup type guys. You're going to have to play Jameis because Taysom Hill is not going to succeed with that supporting cast. And then you need Taysom Hill to come in and do the gadget stuff and give the offensive boost when they need it. If you have him playing quarterback, you don't have that coming off the bench and to be able to run those kind of plays. So I think Jameis is going to win it. I think the defense is going to keep them in enough games, but they're going to be in a lot of close games. And I don't know yet if I can trust Jameis to be on the winning side of a ton of those close games. I don't think this team's going to go out and score 25 to 30 points a game. I think they're probably going to be in the 20 to 23 range. And that defense gives up 24. They're going to be in trouble most weeks.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's roll over to the Falcons. And then I was kind of looking at this team, but I'm not loving their defense as far as my sleeper team. But offensively, they should be able to do what they got to do. Matt Ryan, Pitts, Mike Davis, Cordell Patterson can do some cool things as well. I think one of the most underrated receivers they have out here is Calvin Ridley. He takes over now for Julio Jones. Thoughts about the Falcons here? I think they can score. I just don't think they're going to be able to stop anybody.
Yeah, same concerns as last year. They're going to score, but is the defense going to stop anyone? I don't think they are. And then you just look around. You take Julio off this team. You add Pitts, who clearly can be dynamic, but we don't know. And he's not going to do it in year one where he's going to go out and be a Pro Bowl level player. At least I don't think he is. But Arthur Smith coming over and they want to run that Tennessee offense. We're going to see a lot more ball control, run the ball, play action, but there's no Derrick Henry. And they're turning around and handing the ball off to Mike Davis, who is a nice back, but Mike Davis isn't scaring the second level of that defense to converge on any play fake. So are they going to be able to take the shots and get the one-on-one matchups outside? Our team's going to put 8 in the box to stop the run against the Falcons. I don't know if they are. So I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle on offense, even though they do have some pieces. And then you want to get in those kind of games where you slow it down, play action, run the ball, play defense, but this defense isn't going to stop anybody. They almost have to go the other route and just air it out, but I don't know if Arthur Smith's going to do that. So I have a lot of mixed feelings on the Falcons. Matt Ryan, if you just want to look at the quarterbacks, probably better than the quarterbacks in Carolina and over in New Orleans. But just looking at the roster, I kind of think both those teams are going to finish ahead of the Falcons, and the Falcons are going to finish in last.
Yeah, it could. And like I said, they are going to. If Justin Fields if you ever did a those word bubbles on this show for this show, and it would be Raiders and Justin Fields. If they're gonna wish they didn't take this tight end. I'm telling you right now, he'd have to be Antonio Gates, he'd have to be Tony Gonzalez, Darren Waller, something like that, because it's not going to matter if you don't have a quarterback. I mean, you have an old quarterback on this team right now, and it's just, I don't know. I just feel like they were in a prime position to have a replacement in there for Matt Ryan, and they whiffed on it. They absolutely whiffed on everything on that situation. So bad job by them as far as that goes. I think that's every team in the division. I mean, I'm going to go Tampa. Tampa, Panthers. I'll go Atlanta. And then New Orleans. What are your thoughts about the division?
Similar. I'm going to go Tampa, Carolina. I'm going to go New Orleans because I think the defense is good enough, and they have Alvin Kamara. Yeah. I don't think the Falcons are going to stop anyone, so I'm going to put the Falcons last. And one last point on the Falcons, I would trade a top 5 tight end for a top 10 quarterback every day of the week. So even if Kyle Pitts turns out to be a top 5 quarterback or a tight end in the NFL, who's this quarterback going to be 2 years from now? Or even next year, who knows?
Yeah, I think it was a very terrible move. Terrible. I understand that that's where the owner comes in, and the owner is like, the owner loves Matt Ryan. They have a great relationship, but you gotta know when it's time. He's a king of Home Depot. Like he knew he made strong business decisions with that company. Make one. Let the GM and make one here. And just if you don't want to play him for a couple of years, don't play him for a couple of years. That's fine. But you just can't. You missed an opportunity here. I mean, you could have hit the ball. You could hit the ground running with that situation. Let's go to the AFC South real quick. Tennessee, explosive offense. They can do a lot of different things. They added Julio Jones. with A.J. Brown, with everybody's number one pick in fantasy, Derrick Henry. What are your thoughts about them? Can they stop anybody? They were the one team that made the playoffs that couldn't stop anybody, but could score with anybody as far as points per game goes.
Yeah, I think they're going to win the division. I mean, they have 4 layups against the Texans and Jaguars this year, but I do like some of the additions. They went out and got Danico Autry and Bud Dupree. Now, Bud Dupree might not pay any dividends for the first, 5 or 6 weeks as he overcomes that ACL. But as they get into November and December and start getting towards that playoff run, adding a guy that can come off the edge and give you 10 plus sack potential, they need that kind of guy. They didn't get that out of Clowney when they had him. They didn't get that out of Vic Beasley and some of the other edge guys that they brought in. And then Danico Autry on the inside is consistent. He's going to give them consistent pressure, 5 or 6 sacks. He's going to make a play here or there that might win a game. And I think this comes down to Caleb Farley, the rookie they took out of Virginia Tech. Is he healthy? Is his back going to stand up?
And he's not having it's not going well right now. So far, everything we read. So, yeah.
They need him to be a good corner for them. Otherwise, it's going to be pass rush or bust. If the pass rush doesn't get there, they're going to give up explosive plays down the field. Now, the good thing is they can play multiple styles of offense. They can ground and pound with Henry. They can throw it around the yard with Julio and A.J. Brown if they need to. So they're going to be able to win shootouts and they're going to be able to win some slugfests. So I do like that aspect of this offense. But I think in this division, their only real opponent that's going to give them a challenge is the Colts. And who knows with the injuries that are going on in Indianapolis, if they're going to put up a fight or not.
I know we both follow the Raiders closely. I mean, can we play the Colts now? Can we play them?
Yeah.
Can we play
Does it have to be the end of the year?
Yeah, at the end of the year, seriously. Because, I mean, listen, they put a whole lot into Carson Wentz. I can tell you Philadelphia must be just going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if you will. They got rid of that contract, got rid of him, and he's has this injury now where we don't know when he's going to return. They also their prized possession as far as guards go, he's also Quentin Nelson's going to be out as well. So this could be tough sledding early on. If they can weather the storm here at the beginning, maybe the Colts can contend. But you're starting Jacob Eason or Brett Hundley. I mean, you're asking a lot of those guys who didn't expect to play at all. Who knows what your offensive line is going to look like. I think this would be, if you're taking a running back, I could see Jonathan Taylor getting a whole lot of carries. And he'd get a whole lot of carries anyway with Carson Wentz, but he'd definitely get a whole lot this year because it's just it's really tough when you lose somebody that late in the process. You can't even try to trade for anybody as far as that goes. And anybody who you trade for at quarterback, when you get fleeced right now if you try to trade for another quarterback.
Yeah, injuries are the name of the game now. You mentioned Wentz, you mentioned Nelson. They lost Anthony Costanzo to retirement. Eric Fisher, who they signed, is hurt. He won't play till later in the year. Kwity Paye, their first rounder, is hurt. I don't know how long he's going to be out. They lost Danico Autry. So this defense was built on some rushing forward, playing a zone behind them and getting pressure. And obviously bringing over DeForest Buckner helped them last year. But I don't know if they're going to have the same kind of pass rush if they don't have Autry next to him. And then clearly with Kwity Paye, their first round, they're expecting big things out of him. And who knows how long he's out. They do have some good young safeties. I love Darius Leonard in the middle. The corners are, I like more the slot guy. The outside corners are okay. Xavier Rhodes is getting up there, but he had a decent year last year. But it's predicated on pass rush. But this team, if they have to start and play multiple weeks with Sam Ehlinger or Jacob Eason, and then they're going to miss half their offensive line, they don't have giant playmakers or established guys. They got a lot of young pieces on the outside that need a veteran quarterback, and that's not going to be there for the first couple of weeks. So they just need to hold their water. Luckily, they're in a division where the two teams at the bottom aren't going to challenge regardless. So hopefully they get them early, but they can get some wins late. They just need to hold water against teams outside their division.
Let's go to the Jaguars now. And I'm just, it's interesting how you and I can both watch a player like a, DJ Chalk, right? Or Chark, I'm sorry. I always forget. I always, we mess up his name, my last name. But it seems like from everything I'm reading outside of, and a couple of folks who I know right out there, like this coaching staff can't stand him. Like it's just like it seems like they're really struggling. He's not having a good, I don't know if it's not good camp or what's going on, but like the DJ Chalk is not really, I'm not sure if they're going to get to the point where they're going to trade him or anything like that. But they are not having seeing eye to eye there with him. Laviska Shenault, I think it could be a good piece of the puzzle here. But I think there's just two wide receivers who I think in fantasy will be best friends of young quarterbacks. Corey Davis in New York with the Jets. You can already see it in the preseason, like he and Wilson have a chemistry going, and I do think you're going to see Trevor Lawrence really push the envelope and get Marvin Jones a whole lot of touches this year. They're going to be down in a lot of games. They're going to be, a lot of passes going to be thrown their way. Thoughts about the Jaguars here? They look like a team that obviously they're rebuilding, and I just don't know if I trust this GM coaching combination with Trent Baalke and Urban Meyer.
It's interesting because it's going to come down to the development of Trevor Lawrence, but it seems weird. The Urban Meyer goes in there, and you're starting to hear a bunch of stuff. They don't want anything to do with C.J. Henderson. They want to trade the first round from last year. Joe Sherbert, big free agent addition. They've already traded him. You're hearing some talk about DJ Shark. So it's weird that the better players on this roster, they're talking about moving on from them, and they need to keep those guys and build around Trevor Lawrence. They don't need to get rid of them.
No.
So Urban Meyer, like we've talked about, if he doesn't win for the first 2 years, is he going to be around in year 3 or year 4, or is he going to take the money and run? And right now, he's kind of decimating the roster. I know it might be talk. Maybe they're holding out for a top pick for Henderson, but why would you want to move on from him? You took him in the top 10. He had a good rookie year. He's long. He's explosive. He can run. You would think you'd want those kind of guys on the roster, but maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. But I think you're right with Marvin Jones. He's very underrated. I liked him when he came out of Cal. Thought he was a good receiver. He put up good numbers. He was consistent in Detroit. And he's going to be the guy, I believe, at the end of the day, that's going to lead this team in receptions and probably yardage. Shark might get some yards down the field for touchdowns, but he's going to be the most consistent fantasy guy on this team week in and week out.
PPR, he's going to kill it. You can already see it as far as that goes.
And the offensive line did struggle. I watched that game against Cleveland last week. So Lawrence is going to be running around. I think I read somewhere that he got sacked on the opening series. He got sacked on each of the first two, and that never happened at Clemson. I saw that somewhere. So he was never sacked on back-to-back series in his college career, and it happened to him the first two series in Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's kind of that's how it is when you're the top pick. That's it's kind of crazy as far as that goes. I had one more thing about this team. We'll move on to the Texans. The Texans, I think I can sum it up for the Texans really quick for everybody. The first pick in the 2022 draft will be the Houston Texans. Like this is the only way. This is the only way for them to get better. Only way for them to get under this rug. I just saw a story today that the allegations that went towards, and these are allegations, allegedly, everything that happened with Deshaun Watson, that the FBI was interviewing him today about, I guess they had an interview with him today. I'm not sure when they come in. I don't know. Usually it's not very good. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to him. As far as this goes, I kind of think it's just not going to. I think NFL is just taking their time. I think they're going to end up not playing. I think at the end of the day he won't play this year. But I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, he has no trade value. Maybe they should have traded him when they had the opportunity. I don't know. Maybe the league said don't trade him, or maybe the league said, hey, let's. I mean, we all who knows what's going on with him. But that's a huge shadow. Maybe if they can just start playing football, get destroyed in some of these games, take the onus off of what's going on here. Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he's not going to be anything special for this team, and they have a bunch of guys who are kind of getting their last contracts in with David Johnson and Mark Ingram. I mean, this is just a mess of a team. Looks like I don't see what they can possibly do to improve themselves. The Laramie Tunsil deal was horrible. Where do we begin with the Texans here?
Well, Bill O'Brien basically tore it down with the Tunsil trade, and then he got rid of Hopkins. So he got rid of a lot of equity that they could have used for future drafts. But I don't know what Nick Caserio is doing here. Like, I look at the roster, I have no idea what division is. What was the plan with Deshaun Watson going into camp? He was still eligible to play. Today, he's still eligible to play. They don't even have him practicing. So what are they doing? Who's going to be the quarterback of this team? Are they really going to go with Tyrod Taylor? Where are the weapons outside? Where is the depth? Like, it's a 17-game season. I have a hard time finding 3 or 4 wins on that schedule. So I just have to question everything. Is Nick Caserio just trying to tear it down and get as many draft picks over the next 2 or 3 years as he can and try to build this thing back up? But he doesn't have any foundational pieces that are still going to be there 3 years from now if he does that. So they're in for a long rebuild.
Yeah, and I can't even find players. I'm looking for like veterans who maybe they could trade for. I can't even find any. I can't find any guys on this roster who Zach Cunningham maybe. Like, I can't find anybody in this roster. Whitney Marcellus, like Merciless. I'm sorry. I can't find anybody on this team who I would even want to just like kind of just grab up and snatch up or whatever. Brandon Cooks would be probably, maybe Brandon Cooks, maybe, I don't know, but this is just a bad situation. I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it. The division, I think, is Tennessee, especially with the injury to Wentz. Even if Wentz was playing, from what I saw from Wentz last year for leadership and everything else, I think that they would be the best team. And I kind of feel bad for the Colts a little bit because they really are just a quarterback away. And then the Colts will probably come in after that, and then the Jags, and then the Texans. What are your thoughts about this division?
Yeah, clearly, I think Tennessee's in the driver's seat. I really like Ryan Tannehill, what he's done there for the 2 years, and bringing in an already good offense, then adding Julio Jones to it just makes them that much better. The Colts, I think, will finish second. I think Wentz will be back sooner than later. The fact they didn't go out and get a veteran quarterback leads me to believe that he's got an outside chance to play week 1, if not week 2. And then to me, it's the Jaguars. And that's only because I think the Texans are one of the worst bottom 2 or 3 teams in the league. So I would go in that order: Tennessee, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Houston.
Yeah, I mean, that's a game. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's really bad as far as that goes. Any more NFL? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel bad for the people that aren't fans of the Texans or Jaguars who live in those markets when they have to watch that game twice this year.
Yeah, you're very right about that. Any more thoughts about the NFL as a whole, real quick, before we I kind of want to go back to a little some Raiders stuff where you at training camp as well.
Yeah, as far as the NFL, I think you're starting to see some cuts being made. You're starting to see some rosters starting to take shape.
Some trades.
Some trades are going to happen here, I think, after this week. And then you're going to see, I know fans don't like to talk about it, guys are going to make teams based on their special teams ability and just start paying attention to some of these games, like who's on what special teams, who's playing all of the special teams, trying to look down those rosters because you need a depth in a 16-game season. I think in a 17-game season, especially coming off of COVID, and who knows what's going to happen with the Delta variant. Things can change weekly, if not daily. The depth on these teams is going to be really important. So the teams that have the most depth are going to be the ones that are going to be standing in December, fighting for spots.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's see what happens as we get closer. One more week, and it's like I said, with preseason, it's not alcoholic beer. Don't fall for it, and just look at the injury report next on that following week, because that's what you really need to be worried about as far as that goes. Back to the Put On Raiders podcast here. You were I had a question about Kenyon Drake. Did you? I mean, I know you couldn't see and couldn't see from far away what was going on. You were more on what others, maybe the other side of the field. But were you able to see anything where he was lining up? Was he in motion? Was he in the backfield? Did you get a chance to see for anything from him?
Yeah, so interesting. They opened up in a kick return drill, and it was Henry Ruggs, Kenyon Drake. Back there, they mixed in a little bit of DJ Turner, but primarily was those other 2 guys returning kicks. So I think he's going to end up being the kick returner. As far as offense, he did mix in. He was going in and out with what I believe was a slight hamstring injury, but he did line up in the backfield. He got several carries in the 11-on-11. He did go in motion a couple times. He did line up outside for a couple of routes. As far as what routes he was running and what personnel, I was too far away to figure, and it happened so fast to figure that out. But he was quite involved when he was on the field, which Seemed like it was a lot early, and then it was more Jacobs towards the end, and that might have been more to do with the potential hamstring injury to Kenyon Drake.
You mentioned about. I mean, we all know that the whole defensive line in LA is. I mean, it revolves around Aaron Donald. Did the Raiders' offensive line kind of hold up with other players who are not Aaron Donald? Like, did they kind of hold their own as far as protecting Carr, let him get the ball off? I know Mariota came in and also threw some passes as well. Were they protected in this game, or were they or was it constant pressure on 11-11?
For the most part, they were protected.
Okay.
I think, like I mentioned, the tackles held up well. It was the interior guys. Every once in a while there'd be pressure, but the quarterback got outside. A lot of times in these settings, the coaches blow the whistle quickly. So, 3, 4, 5 seconds after the snap, they're blowing the whistle right when the quarterback's breaking the pocket. So they don't have to get hurt or do anything dumb. But for the most part, the line held their own. They did enough to where Carr had enough time to get passes off. Mariota had plenty of time, although he didn't look very good. He threw at least one interception, a couple that got dropped, just kind of telegraphed and threw it right to the other team. And then Peterman got in sparingly, but he did make a nice play down the field to Foster Moreau at one point. But primarily it was Mariota and Carr, and they probably got similar reps. It seems like they were switching off every series.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. You mentioned Max Crosby. And we all know what Yannick is. He gets to the quarterback or he doesn't on pass plays. I mean, that's kind of who he is. That's fine. I mean, as long as he's still supplying pressure. The guys who are kind of a bit lost in the sauce, Nasvik and Malcolm Kuntz, right?
Yeah, they didn't really stand out, Kuntz and Nassib, when they had their pass rush opportunities. It was few and far between, but they weren't really winning in one-on-one drills, and then they weren't winning in the game situations. But the Raiders had good interior pressure. When those guys on the inside, they were eating. So I think the defense will be fine. The one, Cleveland Farrell, we haven't mentioned him, really didn't stand out in the one-on-one drills. They did do some drills where they had two linemen. So they had an end and a defensive tackle kind of running stunts and running together. And he lined up on the inside next to Ngakoue when they went to those drills. Again, didn't really do much. Didn't really do anything as far as pass rush. Now, they did play very well against the run, which was surprising in this kind of setting. But with all the bodies matched up in there and the angle we were at, it was really tough to tell who was stopping the run and in what situations. But that was good to see. It was encouraging to see that they held up both against the pass and the run, considering they basically played a nickel defense the whole practice.
Cool. I think that's pretty much it. Any on the linebackers? The linebackers and safeties.
Littleton looked good. Moreau was flying around the field. Abram looked good. He was in the box. Abram made a lot of run stops.
Good.
Where he was up around the line and then did make the big pass breakup to Robert Woods late. He did have a play down the field where he was one-on-one with Deshaun Jackson and was able to stop it from being a completion. It probably could have been pass interference. The refs did not throw a flag on that play. There was a little bit of contact, but he ran stride for stride with Deshaun Jackson, so that was good. Offensively, Renfro had a day. He made a bunch of acrobatic catches, and he ate in the slot. Zay Jones, again, made a ton of catches. He was getting a lot of balls. Willie Snead, Mariota must love Willie Snead because it seemed like every time he made a completion, he threw it to Snead over the middle. He did pretty well. So Brian Edwards, I know a lot of people are reaching out. Hey, what about Edwards? There was one big play down the sideline where he got a pass interference call that could have been a touchdown. But other than that, most of the stuff to him was short and underneath, and they quickly rallied for the tackle. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of balls down the field to him, but late in practice, there was two big plays to Ruggs. Carr hit Ruggs on a deep touchdown. He split double coverage and ran away from him. Carr put it right on the money. And later they got him on an over route in a 2-minute drill for probably a 40-yard gain, and he was flying. So Ruggs had a couple drops early underneath on some short stuff, but when they had dialed him up down the field, he made some plays there towards the end of practice. But overall, the defense played really well. It was very encouraging. The offense kind of up and down at times, but there was some big plays, some explosive plays. So that was good to see. Yeah, it's good to see.
Good to see. Carr had a lot of 40-yard completions last year, so hopefully they can get more with that speed. Good to see. Was it kind of crazy to see Ruggs run away from people like that in live?
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting there, and I'm just like, hey, they need to go deep the rugs, and boom, when they did it, like they had him double covered. He just split him and got separation, and Carr put it right on the money, and it was probably 50 yards in the air. It wasn't like a short pass that he ran away with, but once it was in the air, he had a second gear, and they had no chance.
Yeah, once he knows it's coming, he was out of here. So cool, that's great. Next week.